Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the BucsUK podcast. A slightly different episode for you today. We're not going to be reviewing a game, previewing a game, or going to say what we feel the Bucs need to do going forward. No, instead, we have another special guest. Now, this person has got some amazing credits to his name. He has directed the Oscars, worked with some incredible music talent, and he's also directed the London 2012 Olympic Games opening and closing ceremonies. But not only that, he has also directed the greatest show on earth, the Super Bowl halftime show, and he's been doing that for about 11 years now. We are delighted to welcome to the BucsUK podcast, Hamish Hamilton. Hamish, hello, welcome.
Hello.
Good to see you. So without further ado, Ian, I'm going to hand straight over to you to begin the next part of the show.
Thanks, Alex, and thank you again, Hamish, for joining us today. Okay, first of all, rolling back the years, way back when you and I went to the same junior school and senior school in Blackpool. I was a few years above you, as viewers will be able to tell. So while we didn't know each other then, we do retain a number of mutual friends to this day. And as I understand it, it was at school that you acquired the name Hamish. Is that right?
Yeah, my real name is Mark, and the short abbreviated version of that is that I was in a class with probably about 6 Marks, and my best friend was called Mark. He was from Wales, and I was called Mark Hamilton. And at the time, we were reading books published by Hamish Hamilton, the publishers. So I just got called Hamish. I also got called George, as in George Hamilton IV. And I think probably long term, I'm quite glad that Hamish stuck and George kind of, hit the dustbin.
So did your brother get called Hamish as well, or did he have
my brother? Yeah, we're both quite tall. So he's about 6'6". I'm about 6'4". We both, well, I was going to say had red hair in my case. And I guess we look quite similar, or certainly did. And so, yeah, we both got called Hamish, which is really difficult for my mum and dad, because at school, literally people would call the house, when the days before mobile phones, they'd call the house and they'd go, oh, is Hamish in? Or they'd come round and say, is Hamish in? We want to go out, kind of thing. And my mum would have to say, well, which one?
Excellent. And on you went from school, obviously, to a career as a film director with a strong emphasis, obviously, on the music side. So earlier this month, of course, was your 12th year, I think, of directing the Super Bowl halftime show. So going back nearly 12 years now, how did you feel when you were given the opportunity to direct your first Super Bowl halftime show?
I mean, this might sound a bit ridiculous, but I was actually offered the opportunity to direct Super Bowl halftime a couple of times. And the first 2 times I was offered it, I had to decline, because I was actually contracted to do the Brit Awards, which are around about the same time. And, both the Brits and the Brits are basically the kind of a UK version of the Grammys, or the Grammys is the US version of the Brits. They're both big shows. And so, they were both a week apart. And, I just didn't feel that I could do both. And also, I didn't really understand the magnitude, really, of Super Bowl halftime. Despite, having done quite a bit of work in America, I didn't really get it, because I was never here around Super Bowl time. I was always doing the Brits. I've done the Brits, for the entire time I've been coming to America. So I kind of said, look, I can't, and I guess they were understanding, but a bit surprised. So that was the first time I was offered it. And then eventually I said, you know what? Yeah, I'll do it. And obviously, I'd done a little bit of research by then, and it was, it's a massive show. I mean, it's the biggest in the world, isn't it? Right up there with the Olympics, and a very unique show, getting this entire stage onto the field in 8 minutes or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it was from complete ignorance to kind of a fully formed opinion in probably about a week. And, I was kind of delighted but scared in equal measure, really.
Yeah, really. So, I mean, as you kind of touch on, I mean, I think you've got a 12-minute slot for the halftime show itself. And, the challenges of that must be many. I mean, can you summarize the particular challenges from your perspective as the director?
the challenges of the team doing Super Bowl are, you know, again, they're very unique. You know, I don't know of any other show on the planet where you have to conceive the show in chunks that you can push through a, you know, a defined sized tunnel, perhaps around an obstacle, onto grass, which is protected by the NFL, because obviously, you know, we can't roll anything out there. We can't roll things with oil or lifts or, you know, pneumatics and stuff. So it's a really, because most times you've got some big hatch doors, you've got a day, you roll it in the back straight off the lorry and it goes up and there's 1,000 people put it up and la la la, done on concrete. So each show is different, and each Super Bowl halftime is different and is governed by things like the size of the tunnels, believe it or not. You know, is it grass or is it AstroTurf? You know, so it is a very, very unique show. I mean, also, you know, you've got 1,000 people, a few hundred people that push this out there that have to train in car parks, you know, and obviously you've got an artist who will have very strong ideas about what they want, and each artist wants to make their show, you know, more memorable than the last, whether that be bigger or better or more fire or so, you know, the constraints on the show, the physical constraints don't change each year. But each year the demands of the artists get bigger. And this year it was even more difficult because obviously within a pandemic, that puts a whole other set of constraints on the production, which, you know, I think we rose to pretty well. So yeah, it's definitely the most enjoyable show I do each year. It's a roller coaster of kind of fear, creativity, you know, communication, management. It really tests you. And the day itself for every person on the show is very different. But effectively, you just kind of sit around, you know, fearful, worrying about what could go wrong for 10 hours because you've got to be in early because you've got to beat the crowds in. So you sit around in a trailer or around the grass, just kind of like, you know, this could go wrong. That would I do if this happened? What would I do if that happened? You know, and then you get called to your stations probably halfway through the second quarter, you know, and then they go into the final 2 minutes, which, you know, as you all know, could be half an hour, which I've never quite understood. But anyway, you know, as a soccer fan. And then it's go! And you're like Usain Bolt out of the stocks, and you're like, for 8 minutes, go, 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 go. We're ready to go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, go, track. 12 minutes, gone. Was it good? I mean, it's literally like, it's, you know, from old days at the Blackpool Pleasure Beach, it's like the Big Dipper. It's just like, boom. And, you know, you come out of it at the other end and you're like, oh my God, that was insane. You just don't have time really to think about it. It's not, you know, because usually a lot of the other shows I do are, you know, things like the Oscars or the Olympics and stuff, you know, they're 3 or 4 hour marathons. So after 12 minutes, you just kind of, okay, well, you're just kind of easing yourself into it, you know, another 4 hours to go. You know, how are we doing? We're doing okay. Yeah, how are we doing? Okay. On the Super Bowl, it's like, boom, we're finished. It's crazy.
Yeah. All over in the blink of an eye.
Literally.
Yeah. So the last 12 years have taken you to some amazing stadiums. I think 11 different ones in that period. Some probably almost as impressive as Bloomfield Road in Blackpool. So 2 questions. Any thoughts on the kind of various stadiums you've been to? And also any particular logistical challenges? I appreciate, you know, some are indoor, some are outdoor, but I was also thinking, looking back 7 years, there was a kind of cold weather risk when they held the Super Bowl in an outdoor stadium near New York City. So yeah, tell us a bit about the various stadiums and some of the logistical challenges you've had to face.
I mean, you know, the stadiums, as I mentioned before, it's, you know, is it grass or is it not grass? You know, that's a big, you know, grass fields we tend to get slightly less access to, so that affects rehearsal time. Believe it or not, things like tunnels, you know, how long are the tunnels, how angled are the tunnels, how wide are the tunnels, how tall are the tunnels, and that dictates the size of the carts that we can put on. You know, does the tunnel terminate with a field goal? You know, because then again, you know, things have to go around. Sounds ridiculous, but those are probably, is there a roof? You know, what's the weather like? Is there a roof, and what coast are we on, daylight or dark? So you know, and as you mentioned in the question, you know, New Jersey, Bruno Mars,
Yeah.
it was cold. It was cold
Yeah.
in Dallas as well, actually, believe it or not.
Yeah.
There was snow in Dallas. Was that for the Black Eyed Peas? I think it was. You know,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
and there was no
Yeah.
snow loading on the roof in the stadium,
That's
which is a
right.
very impressive stadium in Dallas. So that was like,
Yeah.
okay. And actually some snow fell off the roof and hit one of our lighting directors, and he fell over and broke his leg. So you don't expect that in Texas. You know, I mean, you're always throwing these kind of curveballs. So yeah, I mean, and the stadium in the New Jersey show, you know, we were so lucky because, you know, it was so cold during rehearsals. I mean, like really cold, like minus a lot, you know, and everybody's there in gloves and hats and, like, you know, with hand warmers and your breath's freezing. And then on show day, I don't know, it was just like, oof. And it was a beautiful, crisp day. We did the show, you know, Bruno, great guy, great performer. And then, you know, it was perfect. The game went well. And then the next morning I was snowed in trying to leave JFK. Do you know what I mean? It was just like crazy. We were so blessed.
So a lot of challenges in that. Now, as the BucsUK fan club, obviously we're all huge NFL fans, and nearly all of us are big fans of soccer as well. Blackpool for me, of course. Couple of questions again. So, do you actually get to watch any of the Super Bowl game itself? And secondly, what appeals? You said earlier you're a soccer fan as well. What appeals to you most about the NFL game?
Well, hey, that's good questions. You know, I've been to Bloomfield Road a few times these last few years. My brother's a huge Blackpool FC.
Yeah, I believe so.
It was my grandfather that introduced me to football. He was a massive Blackpool football fan, and he bought his first telly in 1953 for obvious reasons. For people,
Indeed.
Indeed, Blackpool Bolton. Sorry, I forgot the question now. So
yeah, do you get to watch any of the Super Bowl itself? And you know, what appeals to you about the NFL game?
I mean, I don't really get to watch the first two quarters, first half, because, you know, I'm just too nervous. I'm too preoccupied. And in the second quarter, you're doing your final checks, really. You're in the chat, you know, you just like, is this working? Is that working? I mean, you probably don't need to, but you're just kind of filling time and biting your nails and just, you know, engaging in inane, polite chat with people, just desperately trying to keep people kind of focused and not nervous. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm a fan of American football. Because I didn't grow up in America, so I don't have the same affinity for it. You know, I didn't play it at school, and, you know, have kind of fans and family around me who are passionate fans of the game. But the more and more I watch it, I appreciate it. I mean, to be honest with you, I'll be very honest. You know, back in the day, and I mean back in the day, I used to think, oh, come on, it's a game where these guys put on these pads. Watch a game of rugby, you know. But I have to say, through my close exposure to the game, being on the field for a number of games, you really appreciate the athleticism of it, the kind of the technical side to it, and the kind of the plays. So I think it's a more physical game, obviously, than soccer. I think it's probably a more technical game than soccer. And I really, you know, the dynamic between the kind of the quarterback and the coach, and how they kind of manage their plays, and that to me is something that I really admire. I mean, I can't say that I really, really, truly understand, you know, the essence of a brilliant play. I can appreciate it, but I would be giving a great disservice to fans of the game and the game of itself if I said, you know, oh, you know, do you know what? I would sound like sometimes like an uninformed person talking about soccer. Do you know what I mean? And I don't want to sound that way. I really appreciate the game. I really appreciate the athleticism of it. And, you know, actually now my nephew is a huge fan, so he's come over to a couple of games. But, you know, and I have a lot of people now who are, you know, I had actually, unfortunately, I had a few people, friends of mine at the game who were Chiefs fans. So as well, not that you guys care. So yeah, you know.
Our heart bleeds, obviously.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah. But, you know, and actually, I have to say also, having been to, like any sport, I love the passion of it. You know what I mean? And I would say that the other thing that I like very much about NFL and American football is that I think it's less tribal than soccer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember the first time I came to a game, you know, I was walking in and all the different shirts were mingling, and they were like, you know, all in different kind of like, they're tailgating and sharing beers. And I'm like, hang on a minute, where's the fights? You know what I mean? Where's the chanting? Where's "You're going home in a St. John's ambulance"? Where's the four-letter words? You know, and all that aggro that you get across the terraces of a fairly male soccer. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, hang on a minute, I really, because that's the perspective that I went in with. I was expecting to kind of, you know, like walk the gauntlet of Spurs fans and Arsenal fans throwing to each other because I'm an Arsenal fan, you know, and all that abuse and, you know, sometimes, you know, firecrackers going off. And I'm like, hang on a minute, there's people sat next to each other, you know, and again, you know, at the recent Super Bowl, there were fans sat next to each other, you know, chatting and, you know, having a bit of kind of a back and forth, but there's not that aggressive tribalism, which, you know, sometimes in soccer can be fun, but sometimes it can get quite dark and quite, you know, not great. And, you know, brings out the darker side of groups of male nature. Do you know what I mean? And I have never seen that at the NFL. And going to the NFL games in London, the Wembley games, again, you know, I've never seen Wembley used that way, even for an FA Cup final. You know, there was all the kind of the tents and the stalls and the real celebration of the game and the heroes of the game, both sides in the game that you're about to see. And again, you don't get that sense of spectacle and, you know, embracement that you do in soccer that you do in the NFL. So that's probably a very long answer to a very short question.
No, good answer, thank you. Just a quick penultimate question, but I'm going to indulge myself slightly before that and just point to that picture there, Hamish, which is a photograph of the 1953 FA Cup final between Blackpool and Bolton Wanderers, and it's signed.
Stanley Matthews final.
Indeed, and it's signed by Sir Stanley Matthews as well. So very pleased by that. So my kind of quick question before the last question is, could you ever imagine a major halftime show at the FA Cup final?
Well, you know what? That's interesting, isn't it? Back in the day, you know, as a kid, I was probably, you know, I started off watching Blackpool. First game was Blackpool-Fulham, Rodney Marsh and George Best. Boom. Grandfather took me. And then I became a fan of Liverpool, I guess, because they were the most successful team in the local, you know, I mean, 40, 50 miles, which is local in American terms. You know, I used to love those games, listen to the European games on radio, and the FA Cup final, especially when, you know, Liverpool were involved, everybody would sit down. It's a bit like the Super Bowl here, right? We're talking the 70s now, right? We're talking the late 70s, and it's lost its shine. And I think what the NFL have done is they've kept, you know, American football and the Super Bowl the center of, you know, American culture. Everybody watches the Super Bowl in the same way that, you know, I think probably in the 70s, everybody used to watch the FA Cup. And I think that, you know, the development of the halftime has been integral to kind of retaining and broadening the kind of the appeal and the audience who come to Super Bowl. I'd love for you know, the FA to do something like it at halftime. But I think it's almost too late now, isn't it? And that's sad. I think you know, I think that the FA Cup has lost its shine. You know, it's absolutely not what it used to be. I mean, I used to, you know, 2:30, I'd sit down there and you'd get, you know, was it back in the day, Des Lynam and, you know, Colin Motti, and you'd be, oh, great. And even if it wasn't Liverpool, you know, you'd be, oh, fantastic. And, you know, I think those days have gone now, and you know, well done to the NFL for just holding on to it. And you know, anyway.
Okay, so last question from me before I hand over to Kieran, just for a few quick-fire questions from our members. So I thought I'd finish with a tricky question for you, Hamish. So what personally for you have been the most memorable moments across those 12 Super Bowl halftime shows? What really stick out as memorable moments for you personally?
That is a really difficult question, because each show that you do, you get so personally invested in it that it's almost impossible to answer that question. You have so many great moments with the team, like the creative team, with the volunteers who push the stuff onto the grass, with the artists. And actually, I think my real joy comes from, I think probably the most memorable moment, actually, and this may surprise you, is actually being on the practice field, probably on my first or second Super Bowl, and just feeling the joy and pride of the volunteers who were pushing the stadium, practicing to push the stadium out. The carts, we call them carts, the stage carts, onto the field. So imagine you've got 600 or 700 volunteers, groups in 10, all huddled around their car, you know, and you have a member of our team literally drilling them like a military kind of saying, okay, cart 6, go, go, go. And, you know, the pride and the kind of the dedication and the focus and the joy, you know, and they're all going, hey, Hamish, you know, and it was that for me, moments like that are great. And then just seeing them and the joy that they got when it came together, you know, they were getting timed. It's like, okay, guys, do it again. That was 11 minutes. We need to shave 3 minutes off this. We've got 3 days. We need to go quicker. And then the next one's 10. And then the euphoria when they hit 8:10, you know, okay, 10 seconds, we can do it. The last one. And it's like, yes, 7:54, guys. And, you know, it's, a few hundred people coming together, big occasion. You know, that for me is really the joy of Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because when we were discussing the game itself last week, we were talking about it all being about teamwork, and you know, the NFL game itself, it's teamwork, and clearly, as you say, for you yourself, the halftime show is teamwork. Kieran,
teams all around the world, you know, teams from, the creative team comes from all over the world. Obviously, I live in London. You know, a lot of the weekends team were from London and from Canada. You know, and the volunteers come from all over America. It's great.
Okay, thank you. Kieran, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hamish. That was really good. As Ian says, our members were so keen to ask you some questions. We've just got a few quick fire ones lined up. Our first question for you is from Phil, and he said, what's the most difficult part of your job?
The most difficult part of the job is probably on the day stress management, just keeping yourself calm, and also predicting what could possibly go wrong. I think that's what makes this particular show unique.
Brilliant. From Dominic, what was the biggest challenge in the London 2012 opening ceremony, the Isles of Wonder?
The scale of it, pulling the story out of a huge spectacle. Telling the story was probably the most difficult thing within directing that.
And from Stuart, if you could have anyone dead or alive to do the Super Bowl halftime show who hasn't already done it, who would be on your sort of dream list?
Well, there'd be two. But I would have to be doing it in that time. So I'm not saying that I would want to do these artists in 2022 and 2023. The Beatles, to do a halftime show with the Beatles in America in the mid-60s, absolutely, you know, the euphoria, that would be my dream. Closely followed by Led Zeppelin, probably in San Francisco in the mid-70s. There you go. That gives you an idea of my age.
Fantastic. And then our last one from our members, from David. Was there any aspects of this year's halftime show that proved particularly challenging due to the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, rehearsals were very difficult this year because, you know, it's very difficult to get across an idea with half your face covered wearing a glass shield. And it's really difficult to build a sense of community and a sense of teamwork and a sense of show when half of a person's kind of emotions are hidden off. Do you know what I mean? That was the hardest thing. Connecting with people, I think, was the hardest thing.
And one quick question from me, if I may. There's a sort of real affection that builds after these shows, that people remember. You remember your first halftime show. I'm thinking a bit like, you know, like the fun and love towards Left Shark, and like, you know, the wonder this year about the weekend getting lost coming out of the department store, you know, through the what sort of things?
I've not heard that one.
This is sort of the subtitle was, you know, when you lose your mum in the department store, as he's sort of furtively looking around the corners.
I've never
do you think about any of those sorts of things when you're blocking, about how people
No.
might sort of latch onto it?
I mean, obviously, I mean, the lie would be, yeah. I mean, left shark was conceived, and the only problem really was that we didn't think that right shark really got the attention that we. I mean, no, we were like, what the fuck's left shark? Oh, that's clever. And the idea for those kind of puppets, actually, the birth of that was a Scissor Sisters performance that we did on the Brits, which was a farmyard with kind of like, so that was the birth of kind of left shark. And getting lost in the department store. I love that. No, that was kind of a descent into madness. If you the song, if you know what the song was about, and descended, and into chaos and kind of madness. And we worked on that a little bit, but I'd lie to say that we've thought about the memes. I mean, maybe Team Weekend did. Curiously enough, actually, Bruno Mars. There's a shot with Bruno Mars when he's walking to meet Beyonce with his crew behind, and he was saying to me, "Listen, you better get this right, because if you don't, there's going to be memes of this everywhere." I don't need to go into the specifics of it. And curious enough, afterwards, he sent me a text going, "See, I told you," but they were affectionate memes rather than terrible memes. No,
exactly.
But I've definitely had hours of endless fun reading looking at all the memes for sure. But I've not heard the department store one. That's funny. So let me ask you a question then. So I mean, how does it feel to have won the Super Bowl? Your teams have won the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, I mean, because at the beginning of the season we were kind of rank outsiders. Yeah. There's a little bit of feeling of disbelief that we've got there. So there is still a sense of it sinking in. But being honest, there's also, it's tinged with a little bit of disappointment, because many of us would have obviously travelled over to Tampa for the Super Bowl were it not for the pandemic. So we're looking forward to next year as the Bucs aim to get back to Los Angeles. So just indulging myself one more time, the picture above there is the first Super Bowl I went to, which was the Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson halftime show, which was before your time, of course.
Yeah. But curiously enough, set off a chain of events that eventually helped me get the job.
I wondered if that might be the case. That obviously what happened then was a kind of never to be repeated moment, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, there was a huge reaction to that, and a lot of people lost their jobs. And as a director, if you don't know something like that's going to happen, it's really tough. You're on the shot. I mean, that's the last thing you're gonna think's going to happen. And I actually, I actually looked at it back about a year ago, and I actually thought that, I think the director was Beth McCarthy. I think it's Beth McCarthy, who did Saturday Night Live, super talented lady. And, she cut wire pretty damn quick, probably quicker than I would have done, frankly. You're like, you just don't expect to see that on your screen in the middle of the Super, but that, her and the whole of that team after that show were changed, So, there are definitely consequences. These kind of shows are very, very high stakes, and you're asking about one of your viewers asked what was the one thing about your job that you found most difficult, and that's all part of it. One mistake and you're out. One mistake and that's it. You're the guy who used to do the Super Bowl halftime show. There's no margin for error, and you are. I guess you're engaged to help build the creative, but you're also engaged to deliver that creative in the best, most responsible way possible. And if something like that happens, you've got to react, and you have to take the consequences, even though it's just that wasn't Beth's fault. Absolutely not. And as I say, I thought she dealt with it really friggin' well, but gone. That's high stakes live television for you,
Yeah.
And it happens, it happens all the time. I remember on the Oscars, I took a cutaway of George Clooney just as he decided to, play with his nose. And you're like, oh no. And that was a question I got. And not nobody cared about anything else. The first question out by the commissioner was, well, why did you take the shot of George Clooney? And he said, well, he wasn't picking his nose when I took the shot. It's just, what do you want me to do? 3.5 hours of live television, it comes about that. You're like, oh, dude, really? But you know.
Well, I think that concludes everything, Hamish. Thank you ever so much on behalf of us and our members for sharing your thoughts with us and answering our various questions. Thank you again.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Well, our pleasure. Thank you very much indeed, Hamish. That's much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Hamish.
Let's hope the Bucs are there again next year, and you do get your trip to Los Angeles.
And we'll buy you a beer in Los Angeles, Hamish.
Excellent. I'll hold you to that.
Please do.
Lovely.
Right, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Hamish. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. All of us here at BucsUK were shocked and saddened to hear of the awful news which has just shaken the Buccaneer community, and that is, of course, the passing of former wide receiver and captain Vincent Jackson. He was a fantastic player for the Buccaneers on the field and off the field. He led the way in supporting the Tampa community, working with military families by launching the Jackson in Action 83 Foundation. He will also be remembered for being a 3-time Pro Bowler and his 4 consecutive nominations for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. Our thoughts and condolences are with Vincent's family, his friends, and former teammates. Rest in peace, 83.